In this video, I'm going to talk about nutrient absorption, or how those important nutrients in food get out of your digestive system and into your body cells. I want to start with a bit of review. Remember that the digestive system is involved in both digesting, breaking down those food particles, and then absorbing the smaller particles that are made. Digestion, remember, begins in the mouth, but it's essentially completed by the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum or duodenum. Most of the absorption, then, the moving of the nutrients into the body, are going to happen in the remainder of the small intestine, the other two parts called the jejunum and ileum. Along with the molecules that give us calories or energy, those are your carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, your body is also going to be absorbing water and vitamins and minerals as food moves through the digestive tract. And then absorption, of course, is going to require movement from the lumen, or the central open area of the digestive system, into the bloodstream. Looking again at this diagram of the food tube, or your digestive system, food will enter the system through the mouth, going first to the stomach. Typically, food stays in the stomach 2 to 5-ish hours, depending upon its composition. Then it moves on to the first part of the small intestine, the duodenum, which is not very long, but again, food will finish its digestive process in that section. From the duodenum, we move on to the jejunum and the ileum, and that's where the absorption happens. And again, that's going to take about 2 to 5 hours, depending upon the composition of the food. And that, is going to take your food all through this long part of the tube, the longest length of your section of your digestive system. And then it sits in the large intestine for 10 hours or even several days as the final amount of absorption, primarily of water and some electrolytes and minerals, happens. And so the whole process can take, as I said, a day and a half to, sometimes 4 or 5 days, depending upon your food composition and what else is going on in your body. So let's focus a little bit on the small intestine. Just to review, your duodenum is where digestion is completed, where all those digestive enzymes from the pancreas are being dumped in through the pancreatic duct, really as soon as food is released from the stomach through the pyloric sphincter. And then the food moving through the jejunum. This is where you get most of your nutrients absorbed, along with some vitamins and minerals. So most of the absorption work actually happens in this first section, or this middle section of the small intestine, the first section of the absorption part. And then other important substances such as bile salts, which are going to wrap around fats and allow your body to pick them up, and certain vitamins like vitamin B12 are picked up then in the ileum, the final section of your small intestine. To just look at this tube and get some more specifics, you can see as we move from the esophagus, we do have a little bit absorption of happening in the stomach. Water and ethanol or alcohol will be able to move into the bloodstream from your stomach. Then as we're moving into the small intestine, we have bile coming down from the liver, down the bile duct, down a tube that directly deposits it into that first part of the small intestine. Same thing is true for the pancreatic duct, where you have the digestive enzymes from the pancreas. And then you see things like various minerals and vitamins being absorbed in the duodenum. And then your fat-soluble vitamins get picked up because of the bile salts. We have various monosaccharides, disaccharides, various fat because of the bile, proteins and other amino acids being absorbed, water-soluble vitamins, more specific vitamins that are picked up only in the ileum, and then the various bile salts to pick up the last of your fat. When we get to the large intestine, also called the colon, we have various minerals such as sodium and potassium, and of course water being reabsorbed. The absorptive surface, the inside of the small intestine, has a unique structure that's really important for allowing this absorption to happen. This interior structure has many tiny projections, like little fingers coming out of it, and it's also very folded itself. Those finger-like projections are called villi. And then individual cells of the epithelial layer here in the small intestine also have extensions of the cell membrane called microvilli. So you have little fingers out of your cells. The whole inner lining has little fingers sticking out of it, and the lining itself is folded. This allows this surface area, the total surface area for absorption, to be greatly increased, so that this tube ends up being if you could spread it all out flat, it would have a area roughly equivalent to the size of a tennis court. And if you look at your stomach and think about how big that is, and you look at a tennis court, obviously that is a great increase in surface area, and that is what is allowing your body to absorb all of those nutrients efficiently. Here's a diagram showing that interior layer of the small intestine. So we can see the finger-like villi sticking up here into the lumen. On each individual villi, you have many epithelial cells that are doing the actual absorption. You have the interior capillaries of the blood vessels, both arteries and veins, so bringing materials in and out to supply those epithelial cells. And you also see this green structure in the center that is part of the lymphatic system, the lacteals, that is actually where fat is transported around the body. It doesn't go directly into the blood. It goes into the lacteals first. Underneath this layer of epithelial tissue, you're going to have a muscle layer because, of course, your digestive system is surrounded by muscles. That food tube is able to contract and mix food and push it along. Inside your muscles, you'll have, various neurons and stuff controlling things. And along with these circular muscles that are on the top layer, you also have longitudinal muscles, as I mentioned. So muscles go around and also up and down in your digestive system tract. This diagram shows you the columnar epithelial cells that then are making up those villi, the outside layer of the villi. And each individual cell has various extensions of the cell membrane or microvilli, so extending the surface area of the cell itself. This electron microscope illustration shows you again the microvilli as it would appear in the actual cell as comparison to the diagram. Your body is designed so that every last nutrient that passes through the digestive system can be grabbed and used. It's very efficient at pulling in the nutrients, which was very helpful in the past when humans had a much more limited food supply. And in many countries of the world, of course, that still is a problem. And in America, we've kind of got the opposite. Our food is a little bit too abundant and too many nutrients, and sometimes it might be better if we aren't absorbing it quite so well. But on the cell membranes themselves, or the villi cells, you do have some digestive enzymes that are embedded there. So along with the ones that are being injected into the lumen through the pancreatic duct, you also have kind of a last-minute digestion option. If any particles were not broken down enough as they move through the digestive tract before they can be absorbed, you've got this last chance to get them into the right size particle, and so that you are able to, again, take in every single nutrient. The different categories of nutrients are moved into the cells of the intestine. And in this diagram below, where the lumen would be out in this part to the left here is our lumen. Food will then move into your intestinal cells and then move into both blood capillaries or possibly into lacteals if it is fats. And so depending upon what kind of molecule it is, it'll be carried different ways. Carbohydrates, so your monosaccharides, and amino acids, the building block of proteins, are absorbed by facilitated diffusion. Remember, diffusion, it does not require extra energy, no ATP is involved, but because these molecules are charged, usually there's a positive and negative part to them, they require a protein channel, a tunnel through the cell membrane that will allow these molecules to move through. Facilitated diffusion means often there's sort of a carrier part of that protein channel that can grab the molecule and bring it in, but it doesn't require energy in order to do that. Active transport is also used for certain molecules, and this is the one that does require ATP. Energy is required to move that molecule in. Fats, because they are comprised of lipids, and your cell membrane of your epithelial cells is a lipid bilayer. They can basically slide in, so they can be absorbed by simple diffusion. There's not a protein channel that is needed. There's no active transport is needed. Traveling through the water-based digestive system, because all of those digestive juices are basically water, you do have to have the bile salts around those fats that are coming from food, but then the fats themselves can kind of slip right through directly into the epithelial cell. Once they're in the cell, they are given a protein coat, again, to help them stay dissolved and mix in with the or suspended, really, not dissolved, suspended in the interior of the epithelial cells. Those particular particles are called chylomicrons, and then those are the ones that will then move into the lacteal, part of the lymphatic system, and carried directly to the liver to be packaged correctly after that point. Then you also have those vitamins and minerals and other ions, which we can collectively just call electrolytes. And these typically are moved in by facilitated diffusion or active transport, again, because of the charges primarily. Or sometimes we're working against concentration gradients, as we saw in the nervous system unit. We were talking about the sodium and potassium pump. And then throughout the digestive system, water is being reabsorbed through osmosis, which is just the fancy word for diffusion of water moving from areas of low solute concentration to areas of higher solute concentration. So this diagram below focuses mainly on your electrolytes and water. Notice that you are putting out a whole lot of water-based materials in order to digest things. So the salivary glands, the gastric juices from the stomach, the biliary, those are the bile salts from the liver, the pancreatic juices from your pancreas, and then just water that's kind of added to help keep things moving along, adds up to about 7,000 milliliters of liquid that's being dumped into your digestive system. But as it moves through the small intestine, this first part of the diagram, you're going to absorb most of that back out again. This emphasis down below where they're talking about the permeability, where we go from leaky to tight, is talking about how easy it is for your minerals to cross and across the cell membrane. And you see that because the voltage is very low, so there's not going to be a big difference between the inside and outside. So in a leaky situation, and then a very high voltage in the tight situation where one side will have a greater number of the charged particles than the other. But just to kind of show you how water is absorbed throughout the digestive system through the small intestine, and then once it reaches the large intestine, you have about 1,500 milliliters of water kind of excess that's coming primarily from the diet, and you will reabsorb most of that as food travels through the large intestine, leaving just kind of a small amount to liquefy the feces as it comes out the other end. I want to just say a word, as I mentioned in class, about our gut microbiome. So we're an ecosystem within our large intestine, primarily large intestine, because we have a number of different microorganisms that are living there inside your colon. Most of them are bacteria. There's estimate between 30 and 40 different species are inhabiting your body, but you also have some viruses and fungi and some other things that can be living there in a beneficial setup. This is a fairly new area of research, and so we're really kind of learning more. We don't know all that there is to know about what these bacteria are doing from us, but it suggests that there's a positive connection in many cases between the human health and the human microbiome in areas of the immune system, of the health of the gut or the digestive system itself. It can make you more susceptible or less susceptible to certain cancers, especially cancers of the colon. And then, as I mentioned in class, we're seeing a connection between the collection of bacteria that are present and the risk of obesity. More recent research suggests possible connections between brain health and dementia and also cardiovascular health. And so there's a number of places where we're kind of being surprised by how this ecosystem that's existing within our digestive system is really important to our overall health of the body. After nutrients are absorbed, they are packaged and organized before they are sent out to the cells of the body, and that's the job of the liver. The liver has a lot of important functions. It's estimated there's over 500 things that it's doing to keep you healthy. And we've already talked about some of these already. We talked about how it's involved in regulating blood sugar levels, either releasing glucose into the bloodstream, converting glycogen, the storage form of saccharides, into glucose, or it can go the other way where you can store excess glucose. Your body can store excess glucose as glycogen in the liver for future times when you're running low. The liver also synthesizes things. It creates essential nutrients from the raw materials that you have absorbed from the food that you ate. It is a storage place for certain essential vitamins, especially your fat-soluble vitamins, such as vitamins A, D, E, and K. And it also is storing substances such as iron and copper, which is why it has that rich dark brown color. The liver is where we create the blood proteins. We talked about albumin that's involved in maintaining the osmotic pressure within the bloodstream, and also fibrinogen, which is important in the blood clotting process. The liver is where fats that are coming in as those chylomicrons are transmitted or transformed into usable forms of lipid-based molecules. These are your various types of cholesterol, high-density lipoproteins, low-density lipoproteins that are also then traveling around the bloodstream to be picked up by cells. And the liver is where certain harmful substances are removed or neutralized. So the alcohol that is actually toxic is detoxified in the liver. Medications often are adjusted and changed a little bit as they are processed by the liver, and this is something that researchers have to take into account when they are developing new medications. And so it's basically the liver is where everything gets analyzed that you have eaten, and then it is adjusted as needed and sent out then through the bloodstream to the other parts of the body, to those body cells. To put that whole process in a picture, we start down here in the bottom with step 1, where the various materials that you have now digested are absorbed into capillaries from the villi of the small intestine. They move into this rich bed of blood vessels that are surrounding your digestive system, and then are passed through various veins, which are known as portal veins, into the liver itself. And then in the liver, it is analyzed moving through the hepatic system. Various receptors are there to monitor the blood contents, to make basically decisions on what happens to these various nutrients. And then once they have all been handled in the way that your body needs it, your veins, the hepatic veins, will deliver the blood to the rest of the circulatory system by dumping things in to the inferior vena cava, and then of course going up to the heart and being spread around. To check to see if you understand the most important concepts for this video, think about, do you know what part of the small intestine is vital for absorbing these nutrients, and also for what part is involved in digestion? Can you talk about how the structure of the lining of the small intestine allows you to absorb all of these nutrients effectively? How do these nutrients move into the bloodstream? What processes are necessary to move them? And is the process the same for all the nutrients? And then finally, why is the liver considered an accessory organ in the digestive system? Because you're certainly not digesting the food there, but why is it important to keeping your digestive system healthy and also making this an effective part of your overall body processes? If you're not sure about any of these questions, go back and listen to the sections of the video again.